ammeter method and for the, thank God. So the voltmeter ammeter method you know pretty well. Let me not waste time on it. And the Wheatstone bridge is also well known to you. The modifications of that were Kelvin's bridges. The basic problem, see, you have to understand one thing. I don't want you to know all the details of these methods. I want you to appreciate their advantages and disadvantages. That's more important for you as a mechanical engineer. There's a lot of electrical engineering inside. Probably you don't care much about it. I realize that, okay? Important thing is that Kelvin's bridge is more accurate because it has double bridge and that eliminates the effect of contact resistances. He has proven it mathematically here, but at least you be aware of the advantage of Kelvin's bridge over Wheatstone bridge. That is the main thing. Okay. Shortcomings and advantages for various methods of resistance measurement is something I want you to be aware of. The value of R is taken as a mean of two readings. So second reading is taken by reversing battery connection. That eliminates the problem of effect of contact resistances on the measurement. As simple as that. We have other things to do, so I cannot go into each method in detail, that's for sure. Medium resistance, again, I think I have told you most of these methods already. Ammeter, voltmeter can be used for medium resistances. Substitution means you compare the behavior of the circuit with your resistance and with a known resistance. And you change the value of that known resistance until the two behaviors become identical. Wheatstone bridge, we already know ohm meter is the ammeter. We know that already. Medium resistance is not a big issue. High resistance measurement is actually another challenge. And let me quickly tell you the four methods that are used. Okay. Avoid mathematics, except for Wheatstone bridge and for voltmeter ammeter method. High resistance. This is actually very critical because besides conductors, we also deal with insulators, which are the protection so that you don't get electric shock. Insulators have very high resistance. There are four methods used for measuring high resistance. One is direct reflection method, the other is loss of charge method, the third is mega ohm bridge, and the fourth is Megger. Megger is actually very commonly used. I've used it personally in real life. So let's go through. This is the schematic. Essentially, you apply a known voltage and measure the current going through the resistance and apply Ohm's law. The voltage to be applied has to be high. That's the purpose. Okay. There's a lot of detail here, but I'll move to other method which also brings all this. The second method is loss of charge method. Here what we do is, if you recall from first year basic electronics course, a parallel RC circuit, if you allow a battery to discharge through that RC circuit, it doesn't discharge right away. It takes some time for the discharge to be almost complete. There is a concept called time constant of the circuit, which is product of R and C. So what we do is we measure time constant. First of all, we take a battery which is fully charged, and then we allow that battery to be discharged through a parallel RC combination by putting a switch in between. Switch closes at t equal to 0, at time equal to 0. Then we measure the voltage across the battery, which is the same as voltage across the resistor or voltage across the capacitor. We measure it over a large period of time and figure out the time constant. And then we use the well-known formula for time constant. for a given capacitor value would be known to us. It will be a known value. So R can be figured out using that formula. Okay, so theory is not that difficult. You have to carry the measurement out over a large period of time. Usually this method involves large time constants because the value of resistance is quite large. But that is done carefully, and we figured out the time constant by using this equation, small v, which is the time dependent voltage value, equal to the starting value capital V multiplied by e to the power minus small t upon tau. Tau is CR. So once you have taken, let's say, 10 readings or 15 readings, you can plot the curve and figure out the value of tau. And from that tau value, you divide that value by C to get the R value. Theory is pretty simple. If R is very large, time for appreciable fall in voltage is very large. So that is the disadvantage. This method takes long time. Okay, but it can be done. Okay, so please be aware of the name of the method at least. The third method is mega ohm bridge, which is essentially a triangular configuration of 3 resistors, and it has been proven that the unknown resistor can be calculated. Sorry, it's actually it's again a Wheatstone bridge, but with some modifications. Mega ohm bridge essentially is a modification of Wheatstone bridge by putting some extra resistors in parallel with one of the branches. And in other cases, in the other branches also, there's a lot of theory here. So, but ultimately, in reality, you will find that Mager is the one which is most commonly used. It builds in all the theory that we know. Mager essentially is a device where you generate a high voltage by using a hand-driven generator and apply that high voltage to the unknown resistance and measure the current going through the resistance. There's a lot of practical detail here in this schematic. Probably you will not appreciate everything. So the deflection produced is an indication of the current, or actually is an indication of the resistance value. As simple as that. So important thing for you to know is 4 methods, their names and their advantages and disadvantages. Let me reiterate those 4 methods again. Loss of charge, direct deflection, loss of charge, mega ohm bridge, and Mager. Mager is probably the most popular method for measuring high resistance. Okay, so I'm quickly closing resistance measurement because there is a lot more in this document. Mager, I'll send you some more info about it. Don't worry about electrical schematic, you worry about how to operate it. Someday you will be using it in real life. Now, AC measurements are another issue, although we don't have a lot of time to go through each method in detail, but please remember that at AC, inductance and capacitance are also necessary to measure. And for that, most of the methods that we have used for resistance measurement can be suitably modified. Wheatstone bridge can be converted into equivalent AC configuration. Wherever we saw resistors in the derivations, now we will see impedances. That's it. So basic theory doesn't change. Only thing is the equations now involve complex numbers. So remember that AC bridges are generally a suitable modification of DC bridges. DC bridges are used for resistance measurement, AC bridges for inductance and capacitance measurement. You can see that series RL circuit in one case, parallel RC circuit in the other branch, and other two branches have pure resistors. You can always work out the balance equation when the deflection will be 0, and from there you can figure out the unknown values. I know I'm rushing fast because this is not actually in the CIF, so but I thought I'll give you the basic idea that AC measurements are possible. Okay, Hay bridge is also there, phasor diagrams, etc. Just don't bother too much. This is not your Anderson bridge is another one. This part is meant more for electrical engineers than for mechanical engineers. Okay, so please at least be aware of the names, if nothing else. Another D Sonti bridge, I don't even remember much about it, but yeah, it's there. The info is there. A lot of AC measurement techniques are around. Q, you may recall, is a quality factor that is measured in RLC circuits. Methods are available to measure that also. Okay, yeah, this is, wait a minute. Okay, this is another thing. Just don't worry about it. This is infrared rate tester. Just don't bother about it too much. You'll get too much to remember. Module 2 in this document you can ignore completely. That's not meant for this course. Electronic counters, etc. But since it's in the document, let me get over it. Yeah, you don't have to know about all this. Not in this course at least. Module 3 is a recapitulation of what we have done already. DC voltmeter, we know how to use galvanometer to design a DC voltmeter. That theory is given again here. So let me not waste too much time. Basics like RMS value, average value, we have already done that. So a bit of repetition of what we know already. Okay. There's one important thing that you may want to know is how to convert AC signal into DC signal. This is done using a concept called rectifier. This is one example of a rectifier. We have 4 diodes connected in a bridge configuration. If the input is AC, the output turns out to be not exactly DC, but only positive half appears. So it is not exactly DC. That DC must be a flat line, right? With time. You are not getting a flat line by this method. So what you do is you connect a capacitor across the output to make it more flat. And this is how we obtain an approximate DC from an AC. This is one method for sure. There are other methods also, using 2 diodes, using a single diode also. A lot of details again here. Unfortunately, this is not in the CIF of this course. So I don't want to be talking about things which are not in the CIF too much. Digital voltmeter is the digital version of the analog voltmeter. It displays the readings in numbers rather than the position of the pointer. We have seen all this. A lot of electrical detail is there. You probably don't have to worry too much about it. Okay. Operational amplifiers are there inside to process the signal. Forget Q definition. You know this from first year course anyway. Now the last module in this document is oscilloscope. We have done oscilloscope already. So this may be a supplement to what you already know. Maybe we will spend a couple of minutes going through this section. It is essentially talking about the time dependence of various voltage waveforms that you measure in an oscilloscope. Okay, as simple as that. We have seen the basic diagram already in my presentation, so let's move forward. Okay, Lot of detail about CRO here. As I said, as mechanical engineers, you should be more interested in the overall operation of the instrument rather than designing it all the time. This is how CRO screen looks. You know this. It's a reiteration of what you know. This particular signal, if you see carefully, is not symmetric. The positive half has bigger value than the negative half. So in that case, if you calculate the average value, it will not be zero. You can use the basic equation that I gave you and figure out that average value will not be zero in this case. It will be a positive value. That's what they're showing here. But peak to peak value would still be defined as the plus maximum value minus the negative maximum value. And time period, as we define all the time, is the time between two successive peaks of the same kind. Okay, so I think that is about the end of this document. Phase shift between two signals, we know this already. They are showing it again. Okay, so we are done with this document. I want to now come back to the main thing that we should be doing is, and that is three-phase circuits. I have mentioned to you in the past that besides single-phase circuits, we also use three-phase circuits a lot, and there were advantages like economics. When you transmit power using three-phase systems, essentially you save money for the same power to be transmitted. Let me close this document. Okay. The other document that I want to start now is give me 1 minute. Give me 1 minute, okay? I don't know why. Oh, okay. Three-phase circuits. Let me go back to what I was telling you last time. There are two configurations in which we connect the three generators. One of them is known as star configuration or Y configuration, which is what we are showing in this diagram here. And the other one is known as delta configuration, where we connect them in a triangle. Okay. And load can also be connected in a similar manner. It can be either delta connection or star connection. Okay. In case of a star connection, we get 4 wires out, 3 phase wires, or actually 3 lines, which are same as phase voltages, and a neutral wire. In case of delta connection, we get only 3 wires out. So I thought I'll remind you of that. Now let's first look at the load. We'll come to generators little later. A load is called a balanced load when all the 3 impedances are equal. And otherwise it is called as an unbalanced load. Common sense. A bit of mathematics, not very difficult. Suppose I am given a load in delta configuration, which is on the left side. Okay. It has an impedance Z delta in each of the branches. And for analysis purposes, suppose I want to convert it into a star load or Y load, then what will be the equivalent value of the 3 impedances in the star configuration, in the equivalent star configuration? This is a common problem that we solve all the time in 3-phase systems. How to convert a delta load into a Y load and a Y load into a delta load. Let us look at the balanced system first. The 3 nodes for the for the delta connection are capital A, capital B, capital C, and I'm maintaining the same notation for the star load also. Suppose I'm given Z delta, I want to know ZY. In simulation tools, they always convert back and forth from one to another for simplifying the calculations. Now what happens is, mathematics is not too difficult. In both the configurations that you are seeing, you try to calculate the impedance between, let's say, capital A and capital B and equate the result. Between capital A and capital B in the delta configuration, the impedance has got Z delta in parallel with Z delta plus Z delta. There are two branches between A and B in the delta configuration. One branch is simply Z delta, which is between A and B direct. The other branch is through the node C, which has got Z delta plus Z delta. So you have a parallel combination of Z delta and 2Z delta. In the Y configuration, if you look at the impedance between A and B, C node is open, so that will not count. So what you have got is ZY plus ZY. So you have got 2ZY. So you equate the two results. Okay, that's what we do. Z delta multiplied by Z delta plus Z delta divided by Z delta plus Z delta plus Z delta. That is the result for input impedance between A and B in the delta configuration. And in the Y configuration, the same result is ZY plus ZY. Equate the two. This gives you a very good formula and very simple formula to figure out ZY from Z delta or other way around. The formula that you get is 2Z delta square divided by 3Z delta equal to 2ZY. So this gives you 2Z delta equal to 6ZY, which gives you Z delta equal to 3ZY. That means ZY is Z delta by 3. So if I have three resistances connected in a delta configuration, and let's say each one has value 100 ohm, then the equivalent Y configuration will have three resistances whose value will be 100 divided by 3 ohm. As simple as that. Very easy calculation. Okay. This formula can be used both ways. Equation 2 can be used both ways, converting from delta configuration to Y configuration or from Y configuration to delta configuration. The same formula works. By the way, you can also calculate the impedance between B and C in both cases and equate it. You'll get the same result. You can calculate the impedance between C and A in both cases and equate the results. You'll get the same answer again. This equation 2 can be derived in more than one way. So converting a balanced load from delta to Y or Y to delta is quite easy. Unbalanced load requires a little bit more mathematics. And unfortunately, real life generally involves unbalanced loads. Here, I am assuming unequal impedances. Between A and B in delta configuration, I have got ZAB. Between B and C, I have got ZBC. And between C and A, I have got ZCA. And the equivalent Y configuration, let's say, has ZA in the top branch, ZB in the right-hand branch, and ZC in the left-hand branch. Then what will be the formulas? What will be the formulas for ZA, ZB, ZC in terms of ZCA, ZAB, and ZBC, and other way around? The method is the same. You calculate the impedance between A and B in both cases, equate the result. Then you calculate the impedance between B and C in both cases, equate the result. Then you calculate the impedance between C and A in both cases and equate the result. You get three equations, you solve them. That's what I'm doing. equating impedances between A and B for both both loads, it's not lead, both loads between A and B. In delta configuration, or in delta load, I have got ZAB in parallel with ZCA plus ZBC. So the formula is ZAB multiplied by ZCA plus ZBC divided by ZAB plus ZBC plus ZCA. That is for the delta load. For the Y load between A and B, ZC will not matter because C is open. Between A and B, I have got ZA plus ZB. So I write equation 3. Now, between B and C, I will have ZBC in parallel with ZCA plus ZAB for the delta load, right? And for the star load, I will have ZC plus ZB. So that is how I get equation 4. And then the last one is between C and A. Between C and A, for delta load, I have got ZCA in parallel with ZAB plus ZBC. And for Y load, I have got ZC plus ZCA. So that is how I write the third equation. Now, there are two possibilities. One is that you are given ZAB, ZBC, ZCA, and you try to figure out ZA, ZB, ZC. The other possibility is that you are given ZA, ZB, ZC, and you try to figure out ZAB, ZBC, and ZC. Both of them have been investigated. In fact, I have done the derivations myself. To solve the equation, let me first look at the case where unknowns are ZA, ZB, and ZC. And ZAB, ZBC, and ZCA are known to me. So what I did was, I took equation 4 and subtracted it from equation 3. So ZB cancels out. I get a result for ZA minus ZC equal to something. Okay. ZA minus ZC turns out to be given by equation 6. And equation 5 gives me ZA plus ZC. So I can solve 5 and 6 now to get ZA and ZC. In terms of ZA, ZAB, ZBC, and ZC. By solving that, I get ZA equal to ZCA, ZAB divided by ZAB plus ZBC plus ZC. And then I get ZC as given by equation 8. And once I have got these two, the third one is easy to figure out. That turns out to be given by equation 9. There's a bit of symmetricity. If you look at the result, ZA has, by the way, ZA, ZB, ZC, all of them have the same denominator. Whether you look at the formula for ZA or ZC or ZB, the denominator is the same. It's the numerator which is different. For ZA, the numerator has got ZCA and ZAB. You see the interesting part that A is common. This is how people try to remember these formulas. Anyway, in the exam, etc., I'll supply you the formulas. So I don't want you to trust your memory for that. But people try to remember these formulas by saying, oh, left side is having A as a suffix. So in the numerator of the right hand side, A should be common among the impedances. That's how they try to remember these formulas. Anyway, so ZCA, ZAB is the numerator for ZA. ZCA and ZBC, that means C is common when you are looking at ZC. And for ZB, if you look at the numerator, B is common. Denominator is simply the summation of these three impedances in the delta load. Now, other way around, I have not done the derivations, but the formulas have been derived by people. If you were given ZA, ZB, ZC, then how to figure out ZAB, ZBC, ZC? I'm giving you the formulas without derivation. It is possible to prove them. Here, the numerator is identical in the three cases, but denominator is different. If you want to calculate ZAB, the denominator is ZC. If you want to calculate the value of ZBC, the denominator is ZA. There is a bit of symmetricity here also. And if you want to calculate ZCA, then the denominator is ZB. It is good to know that these formulas can be derived using basic circuit theory, but more interesting thing is how to apply them without making mistakes. Look at this problem carefully. It's a very straightforward case. Balance load. 3 resistors in the delta load are equal, and they are equal to 10 ohm. The Y equivalent load, if you go back to the first page, ZY is Z delta by 3, Z delta divided by 3. So the answer is pretty obvious in problem 1. Answer is 10 divided by 3 ohms. This should be very easy for you. Now, they want you to repeat problem 1 for this load, where we don't have resistors, but we have inductors. How would you do that? You know, an inductor has an impedance J omega L. Okay. So even if you don't know the frequency, you can assume that the answer is J 35 omega multiplied by 10 to the power minus 3 because it's millihenry. The impedance in each branch of the delta load is J omega multiplied by 35 into 10 to the power minus 3 ohms. So you know Z delta. To calculate ZY, you simply divide Z delta by 3. That means the impedance in the Y load for each branch will be J omega 35 multiplied by 10 to the power minus 3 divided by 3. And you can remove J omega to get the inductance value. Inductance value turns out to be 35 by 3. I hope you get this. If not, I can help you later also. For these kind of things, you don't need to know the frequency because there is a clear relation between impedance and value of the component. Don't make mistakes in these simple things. Here we have got capacitors. What do you think will happen? I know it's a bit of thinking required. The impedance of a capacitor is minus J upon omega C. Yeah. So minus J upon omega C will be divided by 3 to get the result. Is the answer correct? I don't think it is correct. There is something wrong here. I think capacitances have to go up by a factor of 3 to get the impedance down. Yeah, but okay. Here, okay, sorry, no, the answer is correct. Here they want you to convert Y load into delta load. Yes. So if you want to convert Y load into delta load, then the formula is you are given Y value. So Z delta will be 3 times ZY. Yes. So I think the answer is correct. Yes. The impedance has to go up by a factor of 3 because now the conversion is other way around. As a result, the capacitors will go down by a factor of 3. So there's no mistake here. Please try to look at it for a minute before I move forward. These are the kind of problems you should be able to solve. I know if I were doing it in the actual classroom, I would have done a lot more. But I hope you get the gist of it. If not, please ask me later also. I can help you out. Now, the last problem for today at least has got impedance containing both inductor and capacitor. This is even more interesting. Y load is given and you want to figure out the corresponding delta load. So impedances have to be multiplied by 3 because it's a balanced load, no question about that. And the answer is given here. Inductance will go up by a factor of 3 and capacitance will go down by a factor of 3. I hope you see that point. If not, I will probably give you a detailed solution to this problem. Okay, let's look at one more interesting thing before we close. This delta load is unbalanced. It has got unequal resistors. The formula that you now have to use to get the values of RA, RB, RC will be these ones. Instead of Z, you have got R. So purely real values. ZA, that means RA will be RCA, RAB divided by this sum, RAB plus RBC plus RCA. And for ZC, this formula, all Z's are R's in this particular case. So use these formulas. Hopefully, you will be able to verify the accuracy of the answers given. In fact, I have done that here. RA is supposed to be RCA, RAB divided by RAB plus RBC plus RCA. So plug in the values. RCA is 68 ohm, RAB is 22 ohm, divided by the summation of the 3 resistors. We get 3.84 ohm. Please double check my calculations. Okay? That's always your responsibility. RB is RAB, RBC divided by the summation of the 3. We get 16.92 ohm approximately, and RC is 52.31 in a similar manner. Okay. Again, this problem is the reverse of the previous one. After that, I am definitely stopping. Here, RA, RB, RC are given, and your job is to figure out RAB, RBC, RCA. So the formulas to be used will be different. You should get the answer same as the delta load shown in the previous problem. Okay. So this is how we convert things from delta to Y and Y to delta for loads. One more problem given here. I don't think I will be solving it. And there's a lot more here, which maybe I'll take up next time. But once we know how to convert loads from delta to Y or Y to delta, the second challenge, which is even more serious, is how to analyze an entire three-phase system. Okay. For that, as I said in the beginning, there are 4 possibilities. Let me stop this document and talk